I'll look back on Jaylen Brown's season, how it went, what he can do better, and no, he's not getting traded for Bradley Beal. It's all right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course, the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And I'm here for you every day, Monday through Friday, with a free, fresh podcast dropped directly to your device if you are a subscriber. So make sure you're subscribed wherever, on whichever podcasting app you use. I don't edit that stuff out, man. I just keep going. This is just I do it like it's live. Open up your favorite podcasting app. Subscribe to the show, hop onto the YouTube page, watch the show on YouTube, and head into the comment section. Let me know what you think. Ring the bell, get notified when I drop a new show. I'm John Karalis. I used to play ball once upon a time, and now I cover the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Today's show all about Jaylen Brown with a little Bradley Beal mixed in. And let's just kick it off with the Bradley Beal talk, because he is reportedly being, how do you phrase this? Being talked to about being traded. Bradley Beal is in a unique position because he has the only negotiated no trade clause in the NBA. So he can make whatever, he can make the deal. So the question people have asked and that's been floated out there is, first of all, can Boston get him if they want him? Does Boston even want him? As of right now, according to Brian Windhorst of ESPN and others, the Celtics aren't in on Bradley Beal. So that kind of ends it in a way. But, you know, there's also posturing there. The Celtics can't say they're in on Bradley Beal necessarily, because that might involve some Jaylen Brown talks. Jaylen Brown finally makes second team All-NBA, finally gets to a point where he can get this Supermax extension. And so much of the discussion is, should they trade him? We're still in trade Jaylen Brown territory. And it's kind of wild that they're here still. I get it, but it's not going to happen. It's certainly not going to happen for Bradley Beal. It didn't happen for Kevin Durant. If it didn't happen for Kevin Durant, it's not going to happen for Bradley Beal. So that's out. Can the Celtics do it? Sure, they can do it. There's a way to do it. It involves Bradley Beal saying, I'm only going to Boston. It involves Boston saying, we do want Bradley Beal. And since Beal has has this no trade clause, he can not only say, I'm going to Boston, trade me to Boston. It's the only team I'm going to go to. The Wizards are rebuilding. I guess right now they're going to rebuild. They didn't remake their front office to not rebuild. But at this point, they're still deciding what they're going to do. Beal can say, I'm not going to a certain team, but he can also say, I'll go to Boston, but not for that package. So there's that element here for Bradley Beal. It's not just he can negate a trade to certain teams. He can say, only trade me to Boston, but then the Wizards have to go to him and say, okay, here's the deal. It's Jaylen Brown, let's just say for the sake of argument, and so on. And he'll say, no, I'm not going to go there if you're going to trade Jaylen Brown away. I want to go there to play with Jayson and Jaylen. So I reject that trade. Beal can do that. Beal can reject any trade that he wants. He can say, I'm open to being traded to Boston, but he can also say, not for that deal. So the Celtics can put together a trade that involves Brogdon, Gallinari, and either Smart or Derek White. One of those two guys, basically two of their guards, and Gallinari, plus whatever picks are necessary. That gets the deal done financially. Is that a good deal? No, I don't think it's a great deal. Bradley Beal in place of Brogdon and Smart or White? No, thanks. It's not. It doesn't work for me. So if can they piece together something without that? I think they could, but bottom line is it's not very likely. Boston doesn't seem to be into that. I don't think that deal is going to get done. So forget it. Bradley Beal is going to go somewhere else. Now, where's he going to go? Maybe Miami. I think a potential Miami deal involving Kyle Lowry, Victor Oladipo, which would open up a ton of cap space. I think cap space is going to be super valuable in the new collective bargaining agreement. Teams are going to pay a premium to use another team's cap space. So I think that might be a little bit more likely, but I don't think he's going to go to Boston. Which means Jaylen Brown, obviously, he wasn't going to go for Jaylen Brown anyway, but Jaylen Brown is sticking around, and Jaylen Brown is going to obviously be one of the cornerstones here. And I do think, as I've said multiple times, Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, that is a 2-year window for the Celtics. Over the next couple of seasons, that 2-year window is going to be where the Celtics decide, is Jaylen and Jayson, is that the combination that's going to work for us, or is it not? So for now, let's just start with this. I believe Jaylen Brown's going to get his Supermax extension. I think Jaylen Brown's going to sign the Supermax extension, and the Celtics are going to try to figure it out from there. If I don't think the Celtics are going to get cute with the extension. I don't think the Celtics are going to play games with it. I think I think Jalen's going to just say, I'll take the deal. We'll figure it out. He understands next year he's under contract, the final year of his contract. The following year he's under contract. He's going to be under contract in the first year of his new extension. And then the following year after that is when they have to figure out, okay, in these 2 years, have the Celtics figured out enough with these two guys, Jaylen and Jayson, to say, we are indeed going to pay that $50 million a piece, $100 million combined for the both of them. That's what these next 2 years are about. Can the Celtics play with those two guys? Can they win with those two guys? Can they get over the hump with those two guys? Or is a finals loss their ceiling, which would be a hell of a ceiling, but really not the ceiling that they want. They want to get something more. So what's the deal? Are they going to be able to do this with Jaylen or not? Let me talk about Jaylen and his, what's the likelihood of Jaylen being that guy in the Celtics winning a championship with Tatum and Brown? What kind of season did he have? What strengths and weaknesses can they rely on? What strengths can they rely on? What weaknesses need to be fixed? That's all coming up next. First, today's show brought to you by the Gametime app. You want last-minute tickets now? I mean, with the Celtics season over, you might just be thinking about, oh, what am I going to do this weekend? Let me go get some last-minute tickets to maybe the Red Sox, maybe maybe you want the Revolution, or maybe not sports, maybe a concert, maybe a comedy show or a theater. Go to the theater, and there's some great shows coming into the theater district. You can go onto the Gametime app and you can get last minute deals on tickets for anything that you want. Easy to find and buy the tickets. You can get previews of your, you can get an image of your seat, so you can kind of preview what you're going to see. What's my view here? You know exactly what you're getting when you arrive. 2 clicks, you get your tickets once you decide you want them. You don't have to worry about planning in advance. You just get your tickets right now. There are flash deals, and seriously, the tickets are for anything in a theater in Boston, at a major venue in Boston. And if you find the same tickets for in the same row, in the same section for less, you'll get 110% of the difference from Gametime. They're guaranteeing those tickets. So get these tickets without the stress at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNBA after you create an account for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. We've got a great series of shows coming up. Locked On's NBA mock draft special is here. It's bigger than ever. Follow along the entire first round in a 6-episode ultimate mock draft experience. Only Locked On can deliver. All episodes are available now on Locked On NBA Big Board, on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. So check that out. So Jaylen Brown, obviously a second-team All-NBA season, great season overall, right? Just the numbers, 26.6 points is a career high. He shot 49% overall. That's a career high. He shot 57.6% from 2. That's a career high. I think the story about Jaylen Brown this season is his mid-range shooting and his ability to hit from the mid-range, to hit from the restricted area, and to get kind of create his own shots a little bit. I think he tailed off a little bit, but for a while in the mid-range, he was shooting about 50%. He was one of those mid-range monsters. He was a guy that you can count on in that mid-range. Now, that dropped off a lot in the playoffs. He dropped about 43% in the playoffs, which is concerning a little bit. But when I think about Jaylen Brown at his best this year, I think of Jaylen as a guy who can play downhill, can get out into transition. When he defends at a high level and he gets out into transition and gets out on the break, he can be so deadly in that situation. When I think about Jaylen at his worst, I think about a guy who tries too hard to do too much, and maybe some injuries, maybe the wrist, because he very clearly was dealing with a bad left wrist. I think of a guy that is trying to do too much too often at his worst. And the question for Jaylen is, what is his ceiling? I feel like Jaylen has been facing that question for a long time. And I personally have struggled with what Jaylen Brown's ceiling is. So I'm not going to put a ceiling on him right now, because if you listen to the podcast, I don't know, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, my ceiling for him was a 3-and-D guy. I thought that he was excellent in the corner. I thought he was an excellent cutter. I thought he had the potential to be a really high level defender. And I didn't think he needed to be much else. And so obviously he's kind of busted through that, but I still struggle with, okay, where does this top off? Now, it might be a little bit closer to topping off than it has been in the past, right? His birthday's at the end of October. So he starts the season next year at 27 years old. 27 is the beginning of your prime. 27 is where some of the things that you've been trying to do, even a guy like Jaylen Brown, some of the things you've been trying to do and hasn't quite clicked, This is about the time where your body goes, oh, yeah, we got this. We got this, no problem. Oh, you've been trying to make this step through and blah, 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 blah. Nah, no problem. Your coordination, booms. It just clicks at a point in 26, 27, 28, in that range. So there is a potential here for Jaylen to hit some kind of stride in these upcoming 2 seasons that maybe we didn't expect. There is the potential for Jaylen to find some sort of place mentally where when his body is working the way he wants it to, it can free his mind and he's not worried about trying to do certain things. When I think about Jaylen and his strengths and what's coming next, I think there's a possibility that there is a little bit of a next level for him to reach. But what does that mean? What does that mean for him? I think there's one huge area where he needs to focus, and that's being more selective with his three-point shooting. And it's the same conversation that we had with Jayson Tatum. And I think Boston really needs to look hard, and this is a Joe Mazzulla thing. They really need to look hard at what they're asking Tatum and Brown to do. Because over the past 2 seasons, we just did two episodes ago, the Jayson Tatum episode, and he's been shooting around 35 some odd percent from 3 over the past 2 seasons. Jaylen Brown, last season, 35.8%. This year, 33.5% from 3. Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum have now spent 2 full NBA seasons shooting below average from 3. When you look at Jaylen's three-point shooting numbers, he has 3 seasons above average, 4 seasons below average. His second season, talking about above average now, his second season, his 4th season, and his 5th season. All right, now he's been in the league for 7 years. His 3 seasons, his second season, 39.5%, his 4th season, 38.2%, and his 5th season, 39.7%. He starts out coming out of Cal, 34.1%. His 3rd season down to 34.4%. His 6th season, last season, but prior to this past one, 35.8%, and now 33.5%. So an up and down shooting career, but the overall numbers tell you here's a guy that's 36.5% from 3 in his career, and we now have 2 full seasons of him shooting below average from 3 as I deal with some technical difficulties here. Sorry for my distraction. So if Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum are going to be their absolute best, the Celtics have to figure out what's their threshold for shooting 3-pointers. You just simply cannot have Tatum and Brown now having 2 full seasons shooting below average from 3. You simply cannot have those guys coming down and jacking up a combined 16 3-pointers per game. That's just not something that the Celtics can sustain. It's not something that will get them, because in the biggest pressure situations, the playoffs, it's going to be harder to hit those shots. You don't have the luxury of playing against a bad defensive team in the middle of it all, right? So in the regular season, you're just playing whatever team's in front of you. Teams come in, teams go. You're on the road. You come back. It's very easy to find a team that's a bad defensive team. Very easy to find a team that's going to give up some wide open 3-pointers. Very easy to find a team that will let you get loose a little bit. It's much harder in the playoffs because you're facing the best of the best teams. The worst team that you're facing is going to be the 7th or the 8th seed, and that's a playoff team. So you're not getting any of those bottom feeders. You're not going through any stretch where it's like, and I shouldn't even say that for Boston because their stretch in Orlando was not great either. But theoretically speaking, you're not facing some of the worst teams out there. So in the playoffs, you're gonna generally face the better defenses, the better teams. As you move forward in the playoffs, you're generally going to face teams that have had better offenses, better defenses, just a better team that can game plan for you, better coaching that can game plan for you. The Celtics have to figure this out with Jaylen and Jayson because you can't have two guys who are that good end up being below average 3-point shooters because and I think part of the reason why they're below average 3-point shooters is how many pull-up shots they're taking, how many shots they're taking off the dribble. Let's continue this conversation in just a second. First, I want to just say thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Make Locked On NBA your second listen every day. Locked On NBA has you covered across the league. And hey, I'm on there on Wednesdays, so check out the show on Wednesdays with me and Jake Madison. Hope you enjoy that show. The Celtics with Jaylen and Jayson, it's I'm doing two separate podcasts on these guys, but they're so intertwined. They need to really focus this upcoming season. If you're going to look at Jaylen Brown and paying him that 35% of the max, how do you get the most out of him? How do you make that worth it? I think you have to run the offense the way they did at the beginning of the season, where the ball's moving, the ball's popping. Jaylen needs to catch the ball on the move. He cannot catch the ball and play the Jayson Tatum game. He can't. He needs to catch the ball on the move and make quick decisions. When he does that, he's the second team All-NBA guy. He is an All-NBA player in that scenario. When he stops the ball and he's going one-on-one and he thinks he's got an advantage, that's when he actually takes away from his own strengths, because his athleticism is what gets him through some of those holes when the defense breaks down. His ability to shoot in those tight spots in the mid-range takes advantage of those breakdowns. But honestly, I think Jaylen Brown's number one problem is that he, more than Tatum, Jaylen Brown plays more than Jayson Tatum. He plays the way he thinks he should, not the way that he actually should. I think Jaylen Brown plays in a way that says, hey, I'm a second team All-NBA guy, which means I can do this. He doesn't sit there and say, here are my strengths and my weaknesses. I think Jaylen says, hey, Jayson gets to play like this. I get to play like this too. I'm an All-NBA guy. I believe in myself. I can play this. I can do everything that Jayson Tatum does and more because I'm Jaylen Brown, All-NBA player. And I don't think that does him any good. And I'm just guessing at that. I don't think that he has actually ever said that. But I feel like Jaylen takes the floor, and whether it's confidence or, I don't know, whatever it is in his head, he goes out there and he's like, this is how a guy at my level should be playing. Rather than saying, here are my strengths, I'm going to play to my strengths. And if that also means playing off of Jayson Tatum, if that also means, hey, you know what? Understanding Tatum is the better player, let him kind of do some of the dirty work, breaking down the defense. And when I say swim in his wake, I know that comes off as, it almost sounds disrespectful, but you can have I've been saying this from the beginning. Jaylen Brown can have a Hall of Fame career if he just takes advantage of what's there. If he keeps trying to play a certain way because he thinks this is what a guy at my level should look like, then he's not gonna make anywhere close till the Hall of Fame. But if he says, hey, you know what? I'm going to play in the flow of this offense. I'm just going to play in the flow of the offense. I'm not going to try to do too much. I'm not going to try to create my shot too often. He's obviously an elite player. He can create a shot plenty, but he can't do it all the time. If he just if he just plays in the flow of the offense and takes advantage of the breakdowns, he can score. He averaged 26.6 points per game. He can score 25 for the rest of his career. He can sit there and just take advantage of what the defense gives him. Create a few times here or there. Sure, take some 3-pointers, but hey, how about this? Catch and shoot 3-pointers, not the pull-up 3-pointers. Do your catch and shoots. If you just take the catch and shoot 3-pointers and hit 3 of those, he can be a 40% 3-point shooter. For sure. No problem. Taking 7 3-pointers a game, I'd like to see him drop that down by just one per game. Just one. And he can still hit 2.4, but 2.4 for 6 gets him into that acceptable range versus 2.4 for 7.3, which gets him to 33.5%. Take one of those away. Make those catch and shoot 3-pointers. Play within the flow. Take advantage of defensive breakdowns. And he can be an all-NBA player for the next 5, 6, 7 years. Absolutely can be. And that would allow him that varied offense that can translate into the playoffs. Jalen's biggest issue is trying to do too much. And if Jaylen stops trying to do too much, then he can blossom as an NBA player. And I say blossom as an NBA player, knowing full well that he just had a second-team All-NBA season. But there is a blossoming in there for him. Maybe that's the wrong word. Maybe it's a next level. He can really take it to the next level as an NBA player. If he stops trying to do too much, if he just calms down and is willing to take what's there, if he's willing to play within the constructs of the offense, I think he can take another step. But if he tries to do too much, it's going to be problematic. And it's going to be problematic forever. He's just never going to get out of his own way. And that his mentality is, I think, the biggest issue. I think if he can get out of his own way mentally, man, I am having some real technical issues here with my setup. I am sorry for if I sound distracted. I'm really dealing with some serious technical issues, which delayed the podcast, and I'm really working through it. If Jaylen can let go of some of the things that are weighing on his mind and stop thinking too much about how he's supposed to play and just play within what the Celtics are trying to do And part of this is also the Celtics should be trying to do better things. I think Jaylen can take another step. I think Jaylen has the opportunity to be an even better player. I'm going to wrap it up right there. I apologize. The ending of this podcast seems a little wonky, but I'm just having some issues here. And rather than continue to try to tempt fate, I'm going to wrap it up right there. But thank you for listening to the podcast. Thank you for watching the podcast. I hope you enjoy the podcast to this point anyway, enough to share the podcast. Tell everybody that they should be watching and listening to the Locked On Celtics podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.